Big thank you to Thrive Market for sponsoring today's video. I have been more committed recently to milling all of our own grains and making sourdough breads and baked goods with freshly milled whole grains. I recently had on my podcast Sue Becker, and we discussed all things freshly milled grains and the health benefits. I've had a few emails from people who have asked, now, does that mean sourdough is no longer great? And I completely disagree with that. I still believe that fermenting your grains makes them more digestible and the nutrients readily available. And combining the two things, so freshly milled flour with sourdough fermentation preparation, the most healthy way to eat grains, and in my opinion, the most vitamins available by taking the whole grains and milling them, and then the fermentation process to unlock all of the nutrients and make them usable and readily available for your body. So for this What We Eat in a Week video, sharing some recipes that we're making throughout the week for our large family, I am preparing a double batch of my whole wheat sandwich bread recipe. One will be for a sourdough stromboli. So this is a new recipe over on the blog. Now, most things on the blog do show preparing things with all-purpose flour, but whole grain can usually just be subbed 1-for-1. Now, Sue Becker and I, we did talk about this over on the podcast. So you can go to Simple Farmhouse Life podcast, and we talk about how we would substitute for things like muffins and cakes and cookies, and then how we'd substitute for bread. So for bread, anything that will use a hard wheat, like a hard white wheat or a hard red wheat, you can sub 1-for-1. Now, to increase softness, I like to add a bit more honey, maybe an egg to the recipe. So this is my whole wheat sourdough sandwich bread recipe over on the Farmhouse on Boom blog. Now that one has some whole wheat and some all-purpose, but I'm doing all whole grain, so I make a few changes just to make it a bit more soft. So I'm increasing the honey to 1/4 cup, and I'm adding 1 egg. So from the regular recipe, this translates to 1/4 cup of oil or butter, 1/4 cup of honey, 1 egg, 1/2 tablespoon of salt, 1/2 cup of starter, 1 1/4 cups of water, and 4 cups of freshly milled whole grain flour. I just do stretch and folds throughout the afternoon/evening when I think of it until the gluten is nicely developed. And then I am allowing that to ferment at room temperature for 12 to 24 hours. My kitchen's kind of cool right now, so I can let things ferment a really long time without over fermenting them. Now, one of these I'll cover with foil or plastic wrap and put into the refrigerator to make stromboli. The other I will divide into 2 bread pans, shape it, allow that to rise until doubled, and then bake it. Now this pairs with so many things I'm going to make this week. We like to have a slice of bread with roast or stew, really rounds the meal out. One of my favorite ways to source food for our real food from scratch kitchen and pantry is by using Thrive Market. Now, Thrive Market is the sponsor of today's video. When you go to thrivemarket.com/farmhouse on Boone, you'll get 30% off your first order and a free gift worth up to $60. Thrive Market is a membership-based online grocery store. They have organic and natural ingredients. You can sort by dietary preference on their website. So if you are paleo, dairy-free, gluten-free, you can make sure you only see those options to make it a very streamlined shopping experience. I really love the Thrive Market brand. I get things like their medium roast coffee. I get peanut butter. I recently started getting plain beeswax candles on there. I love the cozy glow around my house of candles, but I don't like all of the fragrances. So I found those on Thrive Market. I also stock up on things like snacks and chips because that's something I just cannot find locally. Chips that aren't fried in seed oils, and I can get them for a really great price over on Thrive Market. Thrive Market also has a deals section. So each time I'm on the website, I will just click on that, scroll through, see if there's anything that I've been wanting to try or that we already get that's on an even deeper discount. Plus orders over $49 ship for free. So it's really convenient to stock my pantry staples, things like spices, flour, condiments that are organic and quality, but for a much lower price. Again, this is a perfect time to make your kitchen healthier for this coming new year. You'll get 30% off and a free gift worth up to $60 by using my link, thrivemarket.com/farmhouse on Boone. One of my children is the pasta maker in this family. She is quite good at it, and I told her I wanted her to start making it with freshly milled whole grain flour. Again, Sue Becker and I did talk about this. She talked about the types of wheat that are best for homemade pasta, but you can also just use hard white wheat. If you want to get started with milling your own grains, but you really don't want to like get all the different types of grains and stock your pantry with every rye and soft white wheat and durum and hard red, that's okay. If you need to only get one, I would recommend hard white wheat. You can do pretty much everything with that. Even if you'll have slightly better results with another, I would just stock that. In fact, that's all I used to stock for the longest time. Now I've expanded and I have a few more 5-gallon food grade buckets in the gamma lids so I can keep more, but I would start there, and that's what she is making pasta with tonight. I mixed up half ground beef and half sausage and made some meatballs. I just added a little bit of salt and garlic powder. I used to dice onions and put it in there, but my kids really don't like it, so I just do just that. Roll them in balls, put them into the oven, bake them until they're done. And I'm making up a quick salad dressing. My go-to is honey mustard just because it's so easy. We always have everything we need on hand to make it. But I don't like having a ton of it because we usually eat it once and then forget about it unless we have tons of greens like in the spring or something. But this is just kind of a one-off salad that we're not going to make a lot. So I made mayo like I usually do, but just with way less oil. So I put the egg in the bottom, probably added about a half a cup of oil, salt, lemon juice, and then once the mayo is made with the immersion blender, more instructions for that over on farmhouseonboone.com if you're unfamiliar. I also make it on this channel all the time. But I then add honey and mustard and salt and lemon juice to taste, and it makes a really nice, easy honey mustard that can be all made in one jar with an immersion blender. So I don't get a bunch of stuff dirty, and it's just a fail-safe go-to that everyone likes. The next thing I want to show you is a brand new recipe over on farmhouseonboone.com. It is sourdough stromboli, so it's just like sourdough pizza, except that it's a little different, a little twist, and you can make all kinds of variations just like you can with pizza. So on the blog post, I talk about making a taco version or more of a traditional pepperoni, salami version. Today, I'm going to do it with ground sausage just because I have some from my sister's farm. I just got a whole hog, so I have a freezer full of pork, and I thought this would be the perfect occasion to use it. And of course, I am doing that whole grain version. So I have the sourdough sandwich bread that I made with 100% whole grain, where I made 2 recipes of that. So I'm going to use this batch to do this sourdough stromboli. So first I mixed up 6 tablespoons of salted butter and a half a teaspoon of garlic powder and made a garlic butter. Spread that onto the dough after rolling it out. And then I added in my fillings. So I'm doing mozzarella cheese, sausage, and some marinara sauce. I'll roll it up and brush it with a little bit more of the garlic butter. Now, if you have fresh parsley, top it with that. Of course, right now I just have dried herbs, but in the spring and summer, I can't wait to make this with a bunch of beautiful fresh herbs from the garden. I'll bake that. It'll get big and beautiful. My kids are always really impressed with this because you cut into it and it looks just a little bit more exciting than pizza. And of course, with all of the fresh and wholesome ingredients, it was delicious and filling and healthy. He's hungry.
Do you have a good nap? Can I have a kissy?
Wintertime is the perfect time to get soup bones out of the freezer. I usually like to do soup bones alongside some stew meat because there's never quite enough meat on the soup bones to really make a stew, at least for our large family. So I usually get a couple packs of the soup bones out and then a couple packs of stew meat. So first I just put some butter into the pot, got it really hot, and then sauteed on both sides to give some color and browning to the meat on the soup bones. After browning on both sides for both of the soup bones I had, I add in some water. I'm just going to let that simmer for a good long while. I'm also getting some beef stew meat out and getting another pot going with some hot butter to give some color to the stew meat. And I have to kind of break it apart because it's a little bit frozen, but we're going to let this simmer all the way till dinner time. So it's just early afternoon now, and I'm going to get this all started, and by tonight we'll have a nice dinner that's been simmering all throughout the day. I also like to saute my vegetables in a bit of butter. Now, I'd like to have some celery as well, but all I had was onions and carrots. A lot of times I would also add in some potatoes, but this is just what I have today. Once those soup bones simmer for most of the day, I'll add in the liquid from that as well as some additional broth. I will add in the stew meat once I've given it some color, allow it to simmer and get soft, some canned tomatoes. And then I also like to add in barley, especially when I don't have any potatoes in here. That gives it a nice starchy grain component that makes it filling, and the kids really love it. And of course, salt to taste. I like to add a lot of salt to something like this. It makes it so good. Any fresh herbs you might have or dried herbs, pepper. It's a classic winter staple for us all season, and of course served with some of that whole grain sourdough bread on the side, maybe toasted with some warm butter. Comforting and delicious. I will add in what meat I can get off of these soup bones. These are quite fatty, so not providing a whole lot of meat, which is why I added the stew meat and some frozen peas as well. One thing I've been making on repeat around here is roast. I like them because you can serve them with mashed potatoes and gravy and do a classic dinner like that, or add some cumin and chili powder and serve them on tortillas with tacos. There's a lot of ways that you can use a nice shredded meat like this. Now, I used to always do the saute function on my Instant Pot, but for some reason it just hasn't been getting hot enough lately to really give it color. So lately I have been sauteing both of my roasts, because I usually make 2 roasts at a time, in my cast iron skillets, and then pour the drippings from that and deglaze the pan with a little bit of wine, pour that into my Instant Pot, a little bit more liquid as well, and then bring it to pressure, cook it for an hour. And then the key I find to roast is after it cooks for an hour, have it on the keep warm function, and then just let it sit in that Instant Pot on warm all day long. That's how you get this nice, soft, pull apart, really easy to chew, deliciously tender roast. Our favorite way to serve this is with mashed potatoes, and then we take all of the drippings from the roast, add a little flour and salt, and cook it over medium to high heat, allowing it to thicken. So we have mashed potatoes, roast, gravy, and then usually if we have some bread, we serve it with that. It makes for such a hearty dinner. This works great for a Sunday dinner because you can get it going in your Instant Pot while you're away at church. You could also make some mashed potatoes ahead of time or just make those last minute. Have the bread already prepared. It works great to feed guests and a crowd as well. Well, I hope that you enjoyed some of these meal ideas that we are currently making for our large family. I love sharing dinners throughout the different seasons. They look a little bit different in the winter from spring and summer. It's really a time for hearty, nourishing foods, and we are definitely enjoying them in our home.